I took the Ridge 9 job because it sounded simple. 3 nights alone at a mountain monitoring station, watching a transfer program while engineers in the city moved years of weather and seismic records to a new system. The agency paid well, because the station sat almost 2 hours from the nearest town, at the end of a narrow service road that climbed through pine forest and old fire-scarred hills. The building was nothing impressive. A low concrete block with a radio mast, a generator shed, and a chain gate across the road. Inside were 2 cramped rooms, a kitchenette, and a control room full of screens. My supervisor, Ivo, gave me the same instructions twice before driving away. Keep the main system online. Do not touch the old radio rack unless it starts sounding an alarm. And if anybody turns up after dark, call dispatch before opening anything. I laughed and asked whether that happened often. He looked at me for a second longer than he needed to. No. That is why I am telling you. By sunset, the road below had disappeared into fog. The transfer program was moving normally. The generator hummed, and the only noise outside was wind passing through the antenna cables. I made tea, called my sister, then settled into the chair facing the monitors. Before Ivo left, he had shown me an old handwritten sign-in book kept beside the coffee machine. Most of the names were years old. The final entry had been written by a technician named Tomas. Beside his signature was a sentence crossed out so hard it tore the paper. I heard someone under the floor again. I had asked Ivo about it. He had taken the book from my hand, shut it, and said Tomas had been overworked. Then he changed the subject. By that first night, I had almost forgotten the note. The station looked too ordinary in the glow of its screens. The records transferred in neat rows. Sensors reported wind speed, ground vibration, and temperature. Nothing moved on the cameras except fog. At first, the yellow indicator on the old radio rack seemed harmless. It blinked once, then twice. A few seconds later, the speaker crackled. Ridge 9 control, this is field maintenance. Open the access gate. The voice was flat and distorted, as if it had traveled through a bad phone line. I checked the schedule. No maintenance visit was listed. I pressed the talk button. Who authorized you? There was a pause. Then the same voice said, storm damage inspection. We have a priority order. Outside, I saw headlights at the lower bend in the road. A white van rolled up through the fog and stopped just before the gate. The driver did not step out. A man in a reflective jacket came around the passenger side instead, holding a clipboard against his chest. He stood under the weak beam of the van's headlights and looked straight at the station. Something about the scene felt wrong immediately. The agency vehicles used blue emergency strobes during night work. This van had none. The jacket had reflective strips, but no logo. And the man never looked at the gate lock, the road, or the mast. He looked only at the windows. I called dispatch from the landline. The operator asked for my site number and told me to stay on the line. I watched the man lift one hand and make a slow, circling motion, as if telling someone inside the van to move closer. Then dispatch came back. There is no maintenance crew assigned to Ridge 9 tonight, she said. Keep the doors locked. A ranger unit is being notified, but they are a long way out. The man at the gate pressed the intercom button. His voice came from the wall speaker beside me, clearer this time. You are alone in there, Nila. Open the gate. We only need 5 minutes. I had never told him my name. I stopped breathing for a second. Then I turned off the control room lights and stepped away from the windows. The van stayed where it was. For a while, nothing happened. No knocking, no voices, no movement I could see. I kept the dispatcher line open without speaking. At one point, a shape crossed behind the van. I thought it was the man changing position, but the figure was lower and broader, as if someone else was crouching near the rear wheel. When I looked again, there was nothing there. Then the power dipped. Every monitor went black at once. The generator kicked in. But before the screens came back, I heard metal scraping against the back wall of the building. Not at the gate, right outside the building. I did not go to the back door. I grabbed the flashlight from the emergency cabinet, locked myself in the control room, and called dispatch again. The line gave one short ring, and then went dead. I tried my mobile. No signal. For the first time, I understood why Ivo had repeated himself. The station did not feel remote anymore. It felt selected. The old radio rack continued to blink yellow. I was afraid to touch it, but I needed another way to call for help. Next to it was a laminated sheet titled Emergency Radio Procedure. The instructions were written in faded marker and ended with a sentence someone had underlined 3 times. Do not use Z Channel 7 unless the main line has failed. Below that was a list of emergency contacts. Every name had been typed except one, written in dark pencil. Thomas Vale, the same name from the sign-in book. Someone had drawn a line through it, then written closed above it. The main line had failed. Before I could reach for the microphone, something scraped again behind the building. This time, it was followed by a soft metallic clunk. I aimed the flashlight through the small rear window blind, leaving only a thin gap. The van was still at the gate, but the man in the reflective jacket was gone. I expected to see him beside the rear wall. Instead, I saw the generator shed door hanging open. The shed was locked when I arrived. I remembered checking it because Evo had asked me to read the fuel level. A second sound came from beneath me. Not outside, under the control room floor, right? 3 slow knocks. I backed away from the desk so fast, my chair rolled into the kitchenette wall. I knew the building had cable ducts under it, but I assumed they were sealed. I opened the cabinet below the old radio rack and found a folder of station plans. A red line on the map showed a service channel running from the generator shed under the building. It ended at a hatch behind the storage shelves. I had walked past that hatch when I came in. It was covered by a rubber mat and 2 heavy boxes of printer paper. There was even an old folding chair on top, arranged so casually that I had never noticed it as an obstacle. The plan showed something else that bothered me. The service channel was supposed to be too narrow for a person to crawl through unless the old ventilation fan had been removed. Beside the route, someone had written a maintenance note, fan. Removed, do not enter until replaced. The note was dated many years earlier. Then I remembered something else. On the first night, I had heard what I thought was a pipe settling near the shelves. I had not checked. I had told myself it was an old building, making old building noises. The radio speaker clicked on by itself. Do not use Channel 7, the voice said. It was not the man from the gate. This voice was quieter, older. It sounded almost like a recording. The speaker clicked off. I moved the storage shelves just enough to reach the hatch. A strip of fresh silver tape had been placed across the edge. It was not agency tape. It was new, clean, and badly applied. I did not lift the hatch. I pushed a metal filing cabinet in front of it and wedged the handle with a screwdriver. Then, I returned to the radio. Channel 7 hissed when I selected it. I pressed the transmit button and gave the station call sign from the laminated sheet. I repeated it twice. At first, nothing answered. Then a woman's voice came through, broken by static. Ridge 9. Identify your emergency. I nearly cried from relief. I gave her my name, explained that someone had cut the phone line, and said there might be a person inside the service channel under the building. She told me to keep talking, stay away from the doors, and wait for the ranger unit. As I spoke, the emergency lights flickered on. Before the main lights faded, I saw a muddy handprint appear on the small glass panel of the hallway door. It was palm down, as though someone had braced themselves there. The station had switched to low power mode. Every room beyond the control room went dark. Then, from the hallway outside the door, I heard a slow footstep. The hatch was on the other side of the building. Someone was already inside. I froze with the radio microphone still in my hand. The dispatcher on Channel 7 asked whether I had heard her. I whispered that someone had entered the hallway. She told me to lock the control room door and move behind the central console, where I would not be visible from the narrow window in the door. I did both, but the lock on that door was only a small office lock. It was meant to keep visitors away from equipment, not keep anyone out. A shadow crossed the frosted glass. Again. Then came a knock. Not loud, not hurried. 3 polite taps. Nila, a man said from the hallway. You do not need to be scared. We are not here for you. His voice was close enough that it did not sound like the one from the radio or the intercom. I heard him breathe between words. I said nothing. "We need the archive cabinet, the one with the sealed drives. Open the door, and we leave." There was no archive cabinet at Ridge 9, not that I knew of. The transfer program had been moving data from servers, but those were mounted in a locked rack I could not even open without a key card. "Ja," the man knocked again. "You made this difficult," he said. "Do not make it worse." The hallway went quiet. That was worse than the talking. For a few seconds, I could hear a faint rubbing sound against the wall. Not footsteps. It sounded like someone dragging a cable or tool along the concrete. The old building carried every vibration. Somewhere beyond the hallway, a cabinet door opened, then closed. I leaned out from behind the console just enough to see the door window. The shadow had moved away. For a second, I wondered whether he had returned to the hatch. Then the security camera screen blinked on. It was part of the backup system, powered separately from the main monitors. The front camera showed the white van at the gate. The driver's door was open. The man in the reflective jacket stood beside it with his head tilted upward, watching the radio mast. The rear camera showed only darkness. The side camera showed the hallway. The man outside my door had crouched beneath the lens, out of view. He knew exactly where the cameras were. A hard strike hit the door. The frame shuddered but held. The dispatcher warned me that the beacon would make it obvious the station was occupied. I told her they already knew that. My hands were shaking so hard that I missed the switch the first time. I broke the seal and flipped the beacon switch. For half a second, nothing happened. Then, a deep mechanical alarm rolled through the building. It was not a normal siren. It was a pulsing tone that started low enough to shake the glass in the control room. A red light began rotating above the entrance, cutting through the fog in wide circles. At the same moment, Channel 7 came alive with other voices. A fire lookout had heard the beacon, then a highway patrol operator, then someone from the regional office asking for confirmation that Ridge 9 was under threat. The person outside my door stopped hitting it. I heard fast footsteps retreat down the hall. On the front camera screen, the man at the gate ran to the van. But instead of driving away, he lifted something from the road and pointed it toward the station. The lights outside went out. Every exterior lamp disappeared at once. The van remained only as a shape in the fog. I heard a door shut outside. The sound reached me through the walls more clearly than the alarm did. In the hallway, the person near my door moved away again, not running, but walking with a calmness that felt deliberate. Then the backup monitor showed a new image from the rear camera, a figure climbing out of the generator shed, carrying a long, black case. There had been two of them the whole time, and now they were both moving toward the building. I stopped looking at the cameras. I did not want to watch them reach the door. The alarm continued to pulse through the station, making it difficult to tell which sounds were outside and which were in the walls. Once, I heard something roll across the hallway floor and stop directly outside my door. I never found out what it was. The dispatcher told me the beacon had done what it was designed to do. Units were coming up the access road, but fog and fallen branches were slowing them down. She kept asking me questions to make sure I stayed awake and focused. Was the control room door locked? Was I hurt? Could I see a safe exit? There was no safe exit. The only exterior door from the control room opened into the hallway. The small bathroom window was painted shut and faced a steep slope covered in loose stone. I stayed behind the console with the radio in one hand and a heavy metal flashlight in the other. The first man returned to the door. This time, he did not speak quietly. "You turned on the beacon," he said. "That was a mistake." A second voice answered from farther down the hall. "The rack is still running." The first man hit the door again. The small window cracked in one corner. I heard the office lock bend inside the frame. I raised the microphone and spoke as loudly as I could. "Channel 7, they are trying to force the control room door. Repeat that to every responding unit." The dispatcher repeated my words across the network. Her voice filled the room from the speaker, loud and official. She named the station, the road, and the emergency response code. The hallway became silent. Then the rear camera came back on. Both figures were outside again. The one with the black case had placed it beside the generator shed. He opened it and pulled out a handheld device with cables attached. He was trying to connect something to the exterior panel. The other man kept looking up the road. I realized They were not trying to get into the control room anymore. They were trying to erase whatever they had come for before help arrived. The console in front of me showed the transfer program still running. A progress bar crept toward completion. I had no idea whether the data mattered to them, but I knew one thing. The station was still sending it out. The speaker crackled. The first man's voice returned, not from the hallway this time, but from the old radio rack. "You do not know what is in those files." I looked at the rack and saw the yellow lamp blinking faster than before. Then I heard engines below the hill. Not one engine. Blue-white flashes moved between the trees, faint at first, then stronger as they climbed through the fog. The men outside saw them too. The man beside the generator shed dropped the device and ran for the van. The other appeared from the side of the building, crossed the road, and disappeared into the trees instead of getting in. The van reversed hard, struck the gate chain, and spun around. It sped downhill with no lights on. Its rear end vanished into the fog so quickly that it looked less like it had driven away than been swallowed by the road. The second man did not come back. When the rangers and deputies reached the station, they found me still crouched behind the console. I could not stand at first. My knees had locked from fear. They searched the building, the generator shed, the service channel, and the forest line before they let me leave the control room. The duct hatch had been opened from below. Inside, they found fresh mud, cut wire, a set of bolt cutters, and a small radio receiver tuned to channel 7. Outside, the white van was gone. The gate remote on my desk was missing. Later, investigators found the van abandoned near an old quarry. It had been stolen from a contractor weeks earlier. The plates were fake. The reflective jacket had no company name, and the clipboard held nothing except blank forms. What they never explained was the message that had come through the old radio before any of it began. "Do not use channel 7. The agency checked the equipment logs. No one had transmitted that message from another station. It was not part of any recorded warning. And according to the digital system, channel 7 had been silent until I spoke into it. I quit the job after that night. I never returned to Ridge 9, but I still think about one detail. When the deputies pulled the filing cabinet away from the hatch, they found words scratched into the metal floor beneath it. The scratches were old, almost rubbed away by years of dust. They ask for the archive. Do not tell them where it is.